So this chapter, we are going to study unemployment search and efficiency wage. Here's a list of topics we are going to cover. So first, we're going to look at labor market facts regarding to unemployment rate, the participation rate, and the employment and population rate. And from there, we are going to see some interesting patterns. Okay. And then we are going to describe the Beveridge curve, okay, and explain its importance. After that, we are going to develop a one-sided search model. So basically, so you only focus on the behavior of the customer to decide whether to looking for a job or not, whether to accept offer or not, right? And from there, we understand, so what is reservation wage, right? Which is a wage the households or the workers decide to work or not. This one-sided search model is going to help us to understand what determines unemployment rate. In the classical model, there's going to be no unemployment. The market is going to clear, right? But in reality, there exists some unemployment. Right? Furthermore, we are going to use this one-sided search model to determine the effect of change in the labor market. So, for example, inefficient wage and unemployment rate. Next, we are going to develop a two-sided search model, meaning not only we look at consumer side or worker side, we also look at the firm side, meaning the demand side, who demands for labor. We are going to use this two-sided search model to explain how the shocks to labor market changed labor force participation rate, unemployment rate, and so on and so forth throughout history. So now first, let's look at some key labor market variables. Start with N, which is work age population. Remember what is defined as working age population. So these are 16 and plus, right? Non-institutionalized civilian population, meaning someone must be 16 years older and not in the institution, either like in a prison or in the hospital. And furthermore, not in military. So that's our starting point, working age population. And then among this working age population, we have a labor force. Actually, I can draw a diagram to show you. So this is the population, right? 16 plus. And then so you have someone in the labor force. Okay, so this is someone not in labor force, not in labor force. For people who are in labor force, this is including those are unemployed and employed. That's E plus U. E stands for employed, U stands for unemployed. E plus U equal to Q, which is the size of labor force, so Q. Unemployment rate is defined as E divided by the labor force. And the participation rate is defined as Q divided by the adult population or working age population. And employment to population ratio is defined as the number of employees. So here, this gives you E, number of employees divided by the population size. I mean, again, so this is a working age population. Okay. So you may wondering why we need to look at these three different measures. Right? Just give you an example. If someone used to be unemployed, now after several months and find out this is impossible to find a job, and then quit to looking for a job, and then so he's not in the labor force anymore. That means if you look at unemployment rate, so the U is going to drop. As a matter of fact, the Q is also going to drop, but the problem is because Q usually is larger compared with U. So hence the U drop leads to the unemployment rate is going to drop. You may tempted to say, oh, the labor market is getting better, but actually it's not getting better, it's getting worse, right? But if we look at the participation rate, we are going to catch up this individual. Because now you're going to see, so the Q, the labor force is going to decline by one person because there's one person decide not to looking for a job anymore, shift to not in labor force. Hence Q is going to decline, but N stay the same. So hence, even though this number is decline, but this number is also going to decline. So this two is going to tell you there's something happening in the labor market. Right, so that's why we look at different measures to complement with each other. Now let's look at the actual number in the U.S. economy. So this is after World War II. This is unemployment rate. We have seen this before in principal class or in earlier stage of our class. So essentially, there are a couple of status facts. Number one, these things fluctuate a lot. Number two, so usually these things goes up when we in a recession. Like say for example here, so this is a 2007-2008 financial crisis. And number three, this number, it seems like never drop below certain threshold, right? So that is something we need to understand. It's two things maybe. So one, why there's unemployment rate always greater than zero? Actually, it's more than greater than zero, greater than 3 or 4%. And two, what caused this fluctuation of this unemployment rate? Okay. Now, before I show you the model, let's look at more data. This green line is unemployment rate we just saw. But now we are going to look at this unemployment rate in different way. So look at here. So this is absolutely number, right? Unemployment rate. Now what we plot here is a deviation from trend. Meaning, let's just look at here. So maybe there's a trend, something like that, right? Slightly increase over time, maybe a little bit, right? And then so we are going to use the actual number, subtract from here. So then clearly you can see some period, so it's above the trend, some period is below the trend. So that's why you have positive and negative, right? Now, what part of that? So actually, so the unemployment rate is here. It's just this blue line. The green line is GDP. Now, if we plot these two together, and then we are going to see some interesting pattern, right? So let me write again. So this blue line, this unemployment rate, the green line is GDP. Again, so this is a deviation from the trend. If it's negative, meaning the GDP is declining, meaning we are in a recession. Now you can see, so when GDP falls, usually unemployment rate rise. Right? So this is pretty much always the case. GDP falls, unemployment rate rise. GDP falls, unemployment rate rise. GDP falls, unemployment rate rise. Right? So they are negatively correlated. Right? But certainly we need to understand that. The other thing is regarding to the labor force participation rate. What is labor force participation rate? That is the Q divided by population. Again, this is adult population. Right. So what do we have seen from this graph? Again, this is after World War II. It increased after World War II, and then eventually it declined. But this is the overall labor force participation rate. If we look at the labor force participation rate by gender, so here this is male versus female. And there's a very interesting and very surprising phenomenon. The labor force participation rate for men is steadily decline. And it declined by a lot, like almost 20%. In the meantime, the female labor force participation rate rise and also rise a lot. This is more than double. Right? Certainly, this is very interesting. And actually, this just gives a better picture regarding to why this number rise and falls. Right? But then the other question is, what is behind this trend? There are many economic research trying to explain this interesting phenomenon. And then one possible explanation is that since World War II, there's widespread use of home appliance, like the washing machine, dishwasher, like vacuum, so on and so forth. Those things actually make the opportunity cost for women to stay at home to do housekeeping increase. And then so they are more likely to go out to looking for a job. But certainly, so this gender pay equality also helps to narrow this gap. Right? But in any case, so that's a fact we need to keep in mind to understand the labor market. Now, next one. Oh, by the way, so this is just like we did earlier, which is look at participation rate and the GDP through different angle. So again, this is a percentage deviation from trend. Now let's just look at participation. Right? Look at here. Now, interestingly, the participation rate co-move with GDP, meaning so when GDP rise, the participation rise. When GDP falls, participation falls. So this is opposite to unemployment rate. Remember, unemployment rate rise when GDP falls. Unemployment rate falls when when GDP rise. Okay, so this is a little bit different. Now the next one is employment to population ratio. It seems like this catch up with each other. Right? This is also reasonable, right? So essentially, employment is part of the labor force. Remember, what is participation rate? This is Q divided by N, but this is equal to E employed plus U unemployed divided by N. What is employment to population ratio? This is E divided by N, okay, employed divided by population, right? So certainly this is going to catch with each other. The only difference is, so sometimes this U is going to rise, right? It's rise or fall, right? So it reflects the fluctuation in GDP. Now, lastly, we are going to look at vacancy and unemployment. So that's the key variable we're going to look at. So that's going to naturally lead to the discussion we are going to have in the next few slides regarding to a model to understand the dynamics of labor market or unemployment. Let's choose A denote the aggregate the number of vacancies listed by firms. What is that? Essentially, that's a job posting by firms who need worker. So that's the total number A. Again, so this aggregate number, meaning you just sum together all jobs available in the market by different firms. And then the vacancy rate is going to equal to A and the numerator. What's the denominator? First of all, you have Q. And the Q minus U. So essentially that's E, the employment number of employees. And the plus A, right? So A plus E. So that's just the denominator, right? So because this is related to job, like you have jobs or these are looking for jobs. That's why we just divide by A plus E. So this is a vacancy rate. So this kind of tells you for each job, like potential job, including potential job, right? How many opening we have. Right? Finally, so I'm going to plot the unemployment rate against this vacancy rate. Like we saw earlier, oh, by the way, so here we just look at short window from 2001 to 2016. So you can see, so unemployment rate is fluctuate, but the vacancy rate also fluctuate. But interestingly, the vacancy rate is almost a mirror of unemployment rate. Right? What is the unemployment rate? That's U divided by E plus U. What is vacancy rate? A divided by E plus A. Right? So now if these things increase, this is going to decrease. Meaning what? Loosely speaking, when unemployment increase and the vacancy is going to decrease, vice versa. Vacancy decrease, unemployment increase. But this is very intuitive, right? So when the firm posts less job openings, and the certainty become harder to find job, right? And the certainty the unemployment rate is going to increase. So actually, so there's another way to look at this. On the horizontal line, we plot unemployment rate. Vertical line, we plot vacancy rate. And then what we're going to see is that these two variables are negatively correlated. Okay, so this is negative correlated. So each dot represents a year. And here, so we just connect those dots since December of 2007, right? I mean, or end of 2007. right? So this is negative correlation. The other interesting facts we learn from this diagram is, since the last Great Recession, this curve just shift outward. So their relationship is the same, but just everything just move up, meaning so the unemployment rate, given the unemployment rate, right, given level of unemployment rate, the vacancy is increased, or vice versa, right? So the shift up. For this negative correlation between unemployment rate and the vacancy rate, we have a name for that. It's called a Beveridge curve. This very famous Beveridge curve is named after this economist Beveridge, who discovered this pattern. So that's kind of what have we learned so far. Let's just summarize. Key labor market observation. Unemployment rate is counter-cyclical. What this means? Meaning if we in a recession, when GDP falls, unemployment rise. Okay, when GDP falls, the unemployment rate rise. Number one. Number two, unemployment rate and vacancy rate are negatively correlated. Meaning, so if the firm posts less job openings, the unemployment rate usually is going to rise. So this is the Beveridge curve. Now, the third thing is very important. Beveridge curve shift out during the last recession. Right. So, inspired by those empirical facts, we are going to start with a one-side search model. Search essentially is regarding to the worker who looking for a job. Right? So this is a one side in the sense we are going to focus on the behavior of an unemployed worker, one side. We are not going to model the firm side for the moment, but later we are going to have two sides, meaning we also incorporate firm's behavior. Okay. So now let's see how the model is going to set it up. The unemployed worker is going to receive a wage offer with a probability P, meaning so at the beginning of each period, like T, with probability P, they're going to receive an offer. The offer has a wage of W. With the probability 1 minus P, no offer. Stay unemployed. Okay, you can think about this is a game. The game played with the natural, or you can think about the flip a coin, right? All right. So now, after the offer is offered, which offer? The household has two choices: accept or decline. Okay? If they accept, then they are going to receive the wage, right? So they're going to keep working. If they decline, now we are going to kind of go to the next period. Right? So we're going to search for job again. P, 1 as P. With W is unemployed. Right? So this is how the model is going to unfold. I mean, the event is going to unfold. Furthermore, we assume all workers either employed or unemployed. For the moment, we don't model not in the labor force, meaning so everyone is actively searching for a job. Either you're unemployed, actively searching for a job, or you employed. So this is a setup. Now let's look at each type of workers problem. Start with employed. If I have a job, what's going to characterize me? If I have a job, so I'm going to use this V of E is going to characterize your welfare or your level of happiness, right? So what is that? So E stands for employee, W is the wage. And by the way, so I forgot one thing. By the way, so if you have a job offer and you accept, and then when next period comes, there's a probability is you becomes unemployed. With probability 1 minus S, you stay employed, you keep working. This is a simple way to model the probability. You may get laid off by the firm may have some problem. Or If you just simply just don't like a job, you want to search for a better job, right? It's either you don't like a location or you don't like your boss or for some other reason, right? So this is the simple way to capture this unexpected event. You may just suddenly lose your job. You're separate from your firm, right? All right. So the welfare of employed worker first is going to depend on a W, but certainly is also is going to determined by S. So for example, if you for sure you're going to lose your job next period, and then so this thing is going to have very little value. Particularly compared in the case, so this job is like lifetime. It's like you have a tenure, right? So you don't worry about. So that's why this welfare is going to decrease with the separation, but clearly this is going to increase with W. More wage you have, more consumption you're going to have. Now let's look at welfare of an unemployed worker, VW. This is a little bit complex, right? So let me go back. For an unemployed, right? For unemployed. So actually, this is when you're unemployed, right? So you, with probability P, you're going to receive offer. With probability 1 minus P, there's no offer. So meaning for an unemployed worker, their welfare is going to depend on two things. One is whether they're going to receive offer or not. That means it's going to capture by P and a W. And the second, the also is going to depend on what they're going to get if they stay unemployed. But certainly, or sorry, by the way, so look at here. Certainly, why there are people who decide to not accept the job offer, like a decline. There must be a reason, right? So the typical reason is, so there's some value to stay unemployed for certain people. Like maybe they just like the way the life looks, like so, they can do some housekeeping or they take care of the kids, so on and so forth, right? So meaning, so unemployment has some value. And furthermore, in modern economy, like so in the United States, there's unemployment benefit, meaning even I'm unemployed, I still can get something from the government. It's not nothing, right? So in other words, so unemployment is going to give me something, right? Both from myself or through the help from the government. Right. Let's back here. So that's why the welfare of employee first is going to increase the UI benefit, meaning so I mean it's how much I'm going to get, how much again, right? This also is going to increase. This is going to increase with P, right? So this is probably you're going to get a job, right? Right. So now let's look at reservation wage. What is a reservation wage? This is a wage in which unemployed is indifferent between accepting or declining a job offer. They're indifferent between these two things. And clearly, that unemployed is going to turn down job whenever this W is less than this reservation. On the other hand, they are going to accept the job. Now, the key thing is how and what determine W star or this reservation wage. That's the focus. Yeah. So this graph is kind of tell the main story. So you have value to be a worker, right? So it's going to depend on W and also depending on this separation rate. But for now, just we kind of ignore that. Just assume this separation equals 0 to simplify. Meaning, so this just meaning, so you're going to have a steady income stream of W for each period. So that's your value. Alternatively, if you stay unemployed, okay, and then, so this is what you're going to get. First, this is coming from your benefit, like unemployment benefit. And secondly, so you have some value from the potential job offer. If these two things cross each other, meaning, so the value of staying unemployed and the value of accepting a job, they are cross each other, they're same. Meaning in these points, I'm just indifferent. So that's the reservation wage. And clearly when this reservation wage goes down, right? So this thing is going to be dominated by unemployed, meaning here, so you're going to stay unemployed. because our employee benefit is going to be better than the wage you can potentially get. On the other hand, so we go to this region, and clearly, so the wage is sufficiently high, it's better than stay unemployed. Now you're going to choose to be an employee, right? So that's the reservation wage. Now let's see if there's something change to the economy, what would happen? First, let's look at if there's an increase in unemployment insurance benefit, meaning B increase. But clearly, so this line is going to go up, right? Because this is largely determined by B. If this go up, now you can see it's going to cross with this curve at a higher level of W. What this means reservation wage is going to increase. And furthermore, this means unemployment rate is going to increase. Why unemployment rate is going to increase? Because more likely the worker is going to decline the jobs. Right? Because you see there are larger region, the worker is going to choose unemployed instead of accept the offer. But what's the intuition behind that? It's simply because the better unemployment benefit is going to make the worker more picky in terms of choosing job. All right. Now let's see so the determination of unemployment rate in this model. Right. Let's start with HW. This is a fraction of worker receiving a wage greater than W. So so this is for any wage. And then what we care is the reservation wage. Right. So clearly, so this thing's kind of decline. Right. So how we understand that? This just means at every period, okay, so there are many jobs available, right? And each job with different wage. And then we just look at the distribution of the job offers, right? And then, so this H of W just tells you the fraction of the jobs offered by the firm has a wage bigger than W. So again, this W is any W. And clearly, if W equals 0, and this is going to be equal to 1, right? Because every job is going to offer you some compensation. If W goes to a very large number, so if example goes to 1 million, and then so clearly this almost equals 0. This is for sure no one's going to get your job, pay you $1 million. Right, so this is H of W. U, let's just denote as unemployment rate. Okay, so now let's see what happened in the long run in this model. The key things is the flow of worker from employee to unemployed is going to equal to flow in reverse in direction. What that means? That just means, okay, so because in the model, so you have two states. One is employed, one is unemployed. So each period, there's some employed is going to separate and move to unemployed S, a fraction of S. And then you also have employed worker receive a job offer, right? Receive a job offer, but not everyone is going to accept. Some of them is going to accept. They are going to move to the employed. So you can see there's a constant flow from E to U and U to E. What can be an equilibrium? If these two is going to cancel each other, and then so we are going to maintain the stability of the labor market, and then we are in equilibrium. Now, first, let's look at the flow of this one from employed to unemployed. This is first, you are going to have a separation times the size of employed. So essentially, this E. So that's going to capture this part. Now let's look at this part, the second part, from unemployed to employed. The size is going to be U. The fraction of, so you have probability of P to accept, to receive a job offer. right? You only move to E when your offer is greater than W star. But then what is the chance you're going to have a wage offer greater than W star? It's H of W star, as we just discussed. Okay? So that refers to this part. These two parts equal to each other, and then we are in equilibrium, and then we maintain the balance. The inflow and outflow, right? So they maintain the balance. So then this equation is going to determine U. It's going to determine U, right? So now let's see. We are going to bring this graph together. On the left-hand side, it's going to determine W star. Once we have a W star, and then so we can determine U star. So again, this is a flow from employed to unemployed, and this is a flow from unemployed to employed. So why the flow from employed to unemployed is decline with U? Okay, here is U. It's obvious, right? Because higher U, and then the smaller pool of employee, and certainly the flow is going to decrease. And why this is increase? But certainly because U is multiplied in front of here. Right? They cross each other. That's going to determine the equilibrium unemployment. Right. Now let's see. So how change in some institutions or some technology affect the unemployment rate. First, let's look at if there's increase in UI benefit. Okay. So if there's increase in UI benefit, this curve is going to move up, and you're going to see a higher reservation wage. Now, higher reservation wage, so you're going to see this line is going to push down, meaning the fraction of people move from U to E is going to decline, push down, decline, meaning you're going to have higher unemployment rate. But intuitively, what's happening? W star increase because unemployment benefit makes people become pickier. If they're pickier, and then they're less likely to accept the job, even though the job is available. So that's why this line is going to push down. Remember, so this line is determined by, so now the key part is H of W, right? So that just means there are less fraction. I mean, if you raise the wage, and then there are less fraction of the job offer is going to satisfy the requirements greater than or equal to the W or W star. So this push down. Right? To summarize, unemployment benefit usually is going to make people pickier. Right? They are less willing to accept the job offer. All right. Now let's look at other possibility. If there's increase in job offer. Okay, let's look at left-hand side. So this value of unemployment is going to increase. Why is it going to increase? Because when I stay as unemployed, not only I receive a benefit, also I have a chance to receive a job offer, and potentially better job offer than I'm receiving now. If this P increase, and then certainly it becomes more attractive to stay unemployed. So again, so the reservation wage is going to increase, right? So now, interestingly, you're going to have two effects. Number one, so this P is going to increase, and then number two, this is going to decrease. Here, we just consider the case, the increase in P is going to dominate the decline in H of W, meaning the unemployment rate is going to drop. Right. So this is the two possible scenarios. How different change in our institutions is going to affect, or in our macroeconomy, is going to affect the unemployment rate. Right. So now we are going to move from one-side search to a two-side search model. So essentially, we are going to look at firms. Our starting point is this one side, as we have already discussed. So here we just simply add other aspect of our economy, which is a firm. But here we are going to simplify a little bit. We're going to look at one period. Okay, so there are end consumers who can or potentially work. Okay, so the N is a working age population. Is working age population. The number of firm is going to be endogenous, or essentially the number of jobs is going to be endogenous. It's not exogenous like in the previous model, like given by P. Right, so let's look at the consumer. Each of the end consumers, they're going to choose whether to work outside the market, meaning homework, or search for work in the market. In some sense, you can see you can interpret this work outside the market. You can interpret this as unemployed. Okay. Now Q is the number of consumers who search for work, meaning who are in the labor force. Now see, so we are going to model people not in labor force, which is given by N minus Q, right? N is the total size of the working age population, and Q is the number of people who are in the labor force. Okay, and then so the difference is going to be the people not in labor force, right? So now P of Q, that's the expected payoff to search for work. Okay, such that they are going to be Q worker to search. Right? So this means, okay, so this is the value for worker. This is a value for worker. But then so the value for the worker is going to detect is going to be a function of Q. But then clearly, so the more people searching for a job, meaning it becomes more attractive to be a worker. Now, then clearly, so the P is going to increase with Q. Or in other words, the value of searching for work must increase with Q, because you want to make sure there are enough people to search for a job. So this is the consumer side, right? Then the consumer side is going to summarize by this curve, right? P as a function of Q. Q is the labor force, right? So expect payoff for worker. You must offer them higher payoff so that you can induce or you can convince enough worker to go out and looking for a job. Now let's look at the firm side. Firm must post a vacancy, meaning so they're going to post a job advertisement on different websites like Monster.com, LinkedIn, or other things, right? So that that's the first step, so that they can attract a worker, but this is not guaranteed. Okay, it's going to show up soon. In order to post a vacancy, usually this is a cost. And here, so we just simplify, or just this is usually how we do the business. So the cost is in terms of consumption goods. It's in terms of consumption goods. Right? What is the cost? The cost, you can think about first, you may need a HR work in this sector. And secondly, so the advertisement is cost you some money. Right? So this example cost. That's called K. Now A is the number of active firms. Right? And here, so the many way to think about, we can say each firm is going to post one job, and then so the number of active firm A, that means there are A firms. Each firm is going to post a job. Or you can say there's one firms, and the one firm is going to post A jobs. Either way, right? So this firms. Now we have two sides, right? So on the one hand, you have Q workers on the market. On the other hand, you have A jobs, potential jobs available. And then, so we are bring them together. Okay, and then, so there's some matching process. You can think about this like a dating market. What's going to be the outcome? The outcome is going to be how many successful match, or meaning, so I mean, how many workers going to accept the job, how many jobs going to fill by potential job candidate, right? So we use M to denote this match, and then we use E to denote matching efficiency. So what's the matching efficiency? First, look at it here. So the E just multiply M is a function as Q and A. So without E just says, let's just look at here. It just says, okay, so depending on how many in this labor force and how many jobs, how many vacancies available. And this function is going to tell you how we are going to cook up this M. This is like a production function. And clearly, so this production function is increased with the Q. More workers search for a job, and more likely you're going to see a match. It's also going to increase with A. More vacancy available, and usually they're more likely you're going to see a match. Now, this is obvious. Now, what is E? E essentially is like a technology. It's technology in this sector. If there are widespread use of internet, or the information is widely available, both for the firm and for the worker, and clearly, so the matching efficiency is going to increase. Or in other words, it's with a higher chance, so they are going to match with each other, or they're going to successfully match with each other. So this is the matching function. But this matching function essentially is going to tell you how many jobs it's going to fill and how many workers is going to get a desirable job. Right. But here, this is the explanation regarding to this matching function. This kind of summarize what I just explained to you. Let me just go one by one. Matching function is similar to production function. Right. So when I say production function, this is what we discussed earlier in growth, Y equal to F of K and L. In order to produce consumption goods, you need capital, physical capital, and the labor. And then usually we multiply by Z, the technology. This is like, say, beginner. So how we organize our workplace. Or we use computer instead of use handwritten, so on and so forth. Okay. So these two input, Q and A, is going to use to produce output, which is a match. And E is just efficiency, plays the same role as total factor productivity in production function. One more thing. So the matching function has a constant returns of scale. Okay. What this means, this just means you have E times M, Q, and A. So if you just multiply this by X, so this is equal to E times X times M of Q and A. Okay. You change the scale of input by X. And then, so equivalently, that's going to change the output by the same scale. This is constant return scale, right? Lastly, but not the least, so you have a diminishing marginal product. Meaning, so yes, more Q is going to increase the total match. But the marginal benefit of rising Q on the increase in M is going to decline. Right? So the logic is very similar to the diminishing return to physical capital and labor. You can think about maybe just the labor market becomes crowded, right? So there's so much information, so much job candidate you need to screen, right? So the same logic. Now we are ready to look at this two-sided search model. Start with the behavior of the consumer. We understand what the consumer is doing, right? So the consumer, so they're going to choose between two things, either home production or searching for a job. Let's start with the important part, or maybe you start with the easier part. Is look at the bottom. If the consumer is unemployed, or equivalently, if they decide to choose home production, they're going to receive a UI benefit. UI stands for unemployment insurance benefit, a B. This is the exogenous. This is the government policy, right? Alternatively, if the consumer chooses to search for work, and then so they are going to find a match with the firm with the following probability, right? So this is a probability for consumer. On the numerator, this is total match. Right, so it's going to depend on how many people search and how many job vacancies are available. On the denominator is the total number of workers who search for a job. That's obvious, right? So you search for a job, but then only M of us is going to match with a good job we like. Hence, the probability for each of us to find a job is going to M divided by Q, or given by this number. Right? What is the outcome? If I match with firm, I'm going to receive a wage of W. Okay, this is the consumer side. Now at the end, so this equation is going to determine household's behavior, or more specifically, that's going to determine this Q, like Q. So essentially, is how many decide to go out and look for a job. On the left-hand side is the value to the worker if I want to go out and looking for a job. On the right-hand side is what? So first I have B. And then so some of us with the match of M, right? And with the M, and then so I'm going to get this W. Right? Okay, to be precise, the way we get this is a simplified, right? So to be precise, so how we get it here? So essentially, let's go back to the PC, right? So this is your, so basically, so you have PC times W, and 1 minus PC times B. All right? But now this is equal to, like, we just simplify this from here, you're going to get B minus PC times B plus PC times W. And then this is equal to B plus PC times W minus B. But what's PC? PC is equal to, okay, so PC equal to this capital M divided by Q, right? But this is equal to E times M Q times A divided by Q. Now we are going to use the property, what we call the constant return to scale. So that's this is equal to E times M Q divided by Q, A divided by Q. Right? So now erase here, so now we understand where we are. So basically, so this is coming from E times M Q A, and then this is equal to E times M. Sorry, so this is coming from this divided by Q, right? And then it's equal to Q, Q, AQ. And then we simplify this E, M, 1. Finally, we are going to define A divided by Q as J. Apologize, there's some problem with the display. So J. So J is defined as A divided by Q. But what we interpret this A divided by Q is the vacancy. Q is how many people looking for a job. And we call this the job tightness. So intuitively, if this number increase, meaning there are more jobs available, meaning, so usually we call the labor market is very tight, meaning this J is very high, right? Very tight, actually, this is from the standpoint of view, for the firm, right? Because the firms start to competing for jobs, right? Because there are plenty of jobs available. On the other hand, if this number is very low, it means we say, so this labor market is very thin, right? There are very few job openings. This is not good for the consumer who are looking for a job, right? All right, so on the right-hand side, that's essentially the potential value for worker, right? And the left-hand side, this is a value so that you can induce Q people to looking for a job. And hence, for the consumer, you must make sure this is equal to each other. Okay, or in other words, so this equation is going to tell us, that is to say, for example, given W, given B, given A. So these equations are going to tell you how many people will go on looking for a job. Now, this is from the consumer side. Or in other words, so this equation, this graph is going to tell you the consumer's behavior, right? So this is the value. This is a value coming out from the labor market to all of the workers, right? So that's going to determine the size of the labor force. Okay. Now let's look at the firm side. Let's look at the firm side. Okay, so apology. So this seems like there's an issue with these slides. Okay. The firm enters the labor market is going to bear a cost. It's bear cost K, right? So this we already understand. Okay. So the K, right? What's the K? It's like you need to post a job, right? It's K. And then the probability that firm with a vacancy find a job is going to be equal to here. Right? This is pretty much the same as I've seen before. But however, so here we are going to divide it by, so this is different, okay? So actually it's coming from here. So capital M divided by A. This is a match, but this is a vacancy, right? So now we are going to, this is equal to E of M Q divided by A, right? Now divided by A instead of divided by Q. So this is equal to E times M. So Q divided by A and a 1. Remember, we just defined A divided by Q as J, the labor market tightness. Now Q divided by A, then it becomes the inverse, 1 over J. So this is slightly different from PC, right? So PC is the chance for a worker find a job, and the PF is the chance for the firm match with a potential candidate. Okay. Now when they are matched, the worker and the firm is going to jointly produce Z. Okay. So certainly there's a trade-off for the firm, right? So what's the trade-off? So they're going to pay K. They're going to pay K. So that's what they're going to pay K. And then so with K, so with the probability PF, they are going to match with the worker. They are going to receive Z, but certainly they have to pay a wage of W. With the probability 1 minus PF, they get nothing, right? So this is cost, this is a potential benefit, right? Now, what the firm is going to do? So essentially, so they're going to make sure, so the K must equal to the expected payoff, right? So the K is the K is the cost, the payoff including two things, right? So PF, the match, okay, the match is going to get Z minus W, right? And then, so they have 1 minus PF, they'll get a 0, right? So nothing work out. So then so we can ignore this part, right? And then so we're going to move this to the left-hand side and with this equation. With this equation, right? Right. So essentially, this just says, okay, PF, the chance to match with a potential worker, okay, is going to equal to those things. Or in other words, those things going to determine the chance of match with a potential worker. But however, so this chance of match with a potential worker largely determined by A, right? That just means, okay, certainly that just means, so given, like particularly given this K and given this Z, or maybe given this W, so that's going to affect how many vacancies the firm is going to post. But now we are starting to enter a loop, right? So how many vacancies you're going to post, that's going to matter the PC, right? Which is the chance for the worker to, the chance of the worker to get a job. But this PC is going to match, this is going to matter to Q, right? So how many workers are going to search for a job. So now, so we are going to see like close moves, but this Q is kind of linked to this together, but this coming up. Okay. All right. So first, let's look at the firm's decision. I mean, in this diagram on the horizontal line is job market tightness. This is divided A divided by Q, right? And this is a chance, right? This is a chance of matching with the job, right? And clearly, so this is going to decline with J, right? How we understand that? So higher J, so means this number is going to be smaller, right? And then the entire thing is going to be the big decline, right? So the labor market becomes tighter, meaning there are more job openings, and certainly for each firm, there are smaller chance to get the desired candidate, right? So that's why this is declining. Now, vertical lines, so you have this K divided by Z minus W. That's largely coming from this equation, right? So in the margin or in equilibrium, the firms need to weight the cost and the benefit of posting a vacancy. Or in other words, when we have K and Z and W everything, so that's going to determine the labor market tightness. But there's one sense missing, which is Q, right? Because this here, so if we know the labor market tightness, well, still we don't know how many A we have because we only know the ratio. Okay, so one sense missing is Q. But then, so this Q is going to come in from the household side, right? Because this J is going to determine the household problem. Maybe we can go back. Okay, look at it here. For the household side, when we know J, and then so pretty much everything is going to determine, right? Because B is kind of exogenous, W is exogenous. So once we know J, we know PC, and then so this is going to determine the PQ, and then so we're going to get a Q. Right? Now go back to here to summarize, right? For the firm, right? So once they know these values, they are going to know what is going to be the J look like in the equilibrium. But given J, the household is going to decide their Q, right? So this is how the model is going to close, or how the equilibrium is going to emerge. Right? But before that, by the way, so but here basically there are three parameters: Z, W, and B. So Z and B, so usually we take as given, right? So this Z is like a technology. So firm and worker, that they meet with each other, how much they can produce. This is like technology given. And the B is also given, which is the unemployment benefit, usually given as a policy instrument. But W is going to be endogenous. That's one more thing, right? Okay, here what I just explained to you is, so if we know Z, B, and W, so that's going to tell you from firm side, it's going to tell you J. And then, so given the J, we are going to go to the household side. You're going to get a Q, right? But there's one key thing we need to solve as well, which is W. Now let's see, so what's going to determine W? Yeah. So the W is going to determine by a bargaining. Okay, before I show you bargaining, let's look at if you have a W. Okay, let's just say, for example, you have a series, you have a W. Now let's see what that means to worker and to firm. Okay. For worker, if they end up with a W, they match the firm and get a W. Meaning, so they are going to have a surplus, meaning they have some extra value compared to work from home. W minus B, right? But from here, immediately means, okay, W must equal greater than B. Otherwise, no one's going to go out looking for a job, right? So this extra value for worker, if I decide to go to looking for a job, W minus B. Now let's see what this means for firm. Firm, they are going to produce Z, they pay a wage, so this is their profit. right? And clearly, so the total surplus or the total gain for worker and firm, if they decide to search and decide to post a vacancy and finally they match, the total surplus is going to be Z minus B. But clearly, so this Z minus B must split between worker and firm, right? So how they split is going to determine by this W. So essentially, there's a difference between B and Z. How they're going to split? So if example W goes to here, meaning so the firm get squeezed. If W goes here, and then worker is going to get squeezed, right? And then, so how they're going to split the surplus? So we are going to say this is going to determine by this bargaining process. It's like you go to a market, right? So you want to bargain with the price, right? And then, so which price is going to settle? It's depending on who has more bargaining power. Because for example, so there are plenty of houses on sale, and usually the buyer has more bargaining power. Vice versa, right? And similar here. And then, so we are going to say, so we use A to denote the bargaining power. Okay, the bargaining power of the worker. This is just a simple way to say that. So and then, so the wage is going to equal to A times Z times 1 minus A times B. Meaning, so if the worker has more bargaining power, A increase, and then the wage is going to increase. If worker has zero bargaining power, now let's see what happens. If worker has zero bargaining power, and then naturally the firm is going to set the price wage at B, right? So you just make you just the same as unemployed. On the other hand, if the worker has the completely bargaining power, and then the worker is going to leave the firm with zero profit, they're going to take away all the surplus. So Z equal to W equal to Z, right? So this is the wage. Or in other words, so we are going to use double. Sorry, back here. So we are going to use these. We are going to use these to give you the wage. Now you can see, so certainly wage is going to disappear, but we are going to use A to characterize wage. Because remember, Z and B is exogenous, right? So Z is the technology, and B is government policy. Now A is the bargaining power. So now simply we just use A to substitute for W. And then we back to the original equation we have. Apologize, so there's a problem with the slides, or showing the slides. So first look at the household side. So households, this is the value of research. This is what they can potentially get, right? Remember, this is coming from this PC, right? So essentially, this is coming from, so PC times W plus 1 minus PC times B, right? And then we just simplify. Simplify this is equal to B plus PC times W minus B. But what's W? W, this is what we just get, right? So what we get here. And then we substitute this into here, and then simply we get this equation. Okay, I'll leave the algebra for yourself. Okay. But this is also very intuitive, right? So if A increase, the worker has more bargaining power, and clearly they are going to generate more. They're going to generate more value from searching for a job. Okay. From the firm side, so this is going to be E times M. This is essential. This is a PF. Okay. Equal to P, and then so similarly, we're going to plug in this number. So maybe just go to the next slide. Next slide. Okay. Sorry. So it goes here, right? This is clear. Right. So this is what we just derived, right? So this P of Q. What's P of Q? So this is for worker, right? So they have a value, and then value is going to determined by, so the benefit, unemployment benefit, and the potential wage. But certainly this is not a wage, it's just part of the wage, because we just subtract B from the wage. All right? And then, but clearly this is going to depend on their bargaining power. On the other hand, for the firm, the vacancy they're going to post, or the labor market tightness, is going to determine by this value. But again, this value is coming from wage, and then we substitute A into wage. And then clearly the lower the A, sorry, higher A, meaning lower 1 minus A, meaning so the firm has less bargaining power. If the firm has less bargaining power, and then this entire value is going to increase, meaning they are going to take the equivalent. That just means they are going to derive less surplus. They are going to have lower incentive to offer job vacancies, right? All right, to summarize here, so what are we going to have? So basically here we are going to solve the equilibrium Q star and the J star, right? How we do that? So given K, A, B, and Z, so those are exogenous parameters, right? So okay, so what is K? Is the cause of post vacancy. A is the bargaining power for worker. B is the unemployment benefit. Z is the technology, like production. Given those parameters, and then the firm is going to decide, or from a firm side, you can see what's the labor market tightness. Now, given the labor market tightness, and then immediately we are going to find out a Q star, right? But now, so once we find a Q star, let's go back. We can easily solve for unemployment rate and the vacancy rate. What is unemployment rate? So by the way, so unemployment rate is U divided by Q, right? But what is U? U essentially is Q minus the total match, right? And then simply this is equal to 1 minus M divided by Q. So that's how we end up with here. Okay, I leave the algebra for you, but that should be very straightforward. And the vacancy, what is vacancy? Essentially A divided by Q, right? And then so similarly, so we can just get this number, right? So that just means, okay, so now we have two sides, okay, by looking at households and the firm. So we are going to join to determine many things. This including how many people search for a job, like labor market, labor force participation. Oh, by the way, so we can also solve for labor force participation rate, which equal to Q divided by N. We can solve for unemployment rate, right? And so on and so forth. And certainly we already have a wage rate, right? All right. So now we are going to use this two-side search model to understand the determination of unemployment rate, or to understand if there's something changed to our economy, how the economy is going to respond. We're going to look at three possible scenarios: change in unemployment benefit, change in productivity, and a change in matching efficiency. First, let's look at if there's an increase in UI benefit. Immediately, that is going to reduce the total surplus. Like B increase, and then the difference between Z and B is going to decrease. Okay. So the total surplus is going to decrease. Now let's see. So let me just use the graph to explain to you what would happen. Okay. So Z minus B decrease. Okay. So that immediately means the firm is going to extract less surplus from potential match, and then so clearly, so they are going to have lower incentive to offer job openings. The labor market tightness is going to decrease. Now J decrease. So if we just stay with the same things here, so that just means you're going to have a lower Q, right? Let's just start with here. We are going to have a lower Q. Now Q, so B increase leads to J decrease, leads Q decrease. But there's another impact. So when B increase, that's actually here, this is from the firm side. Now there's other side. when B increase, and actually to make search more attractive. Why? Simply because worker is going to get more outside options, so they are more willing to search. Right? So even fail, so they are going to get higher benefit. So that just means P of Q is going to increase. And that just means everything else equal. So this is going to lead to Q is going to increase. Here we show a scenario when this increase is outpace or dominate the decrease. So this means this is slightly different from what we have learned in this one side, right? So the unemployment benefit increase is encourage more people to looking for a job. Right? So this not necessarily means it's going to increase unemployment as we discussed earlier, right? Let's go back to the previous slide. This is kind of summarize. Okay, so increasing wage as alternative working become more tempting for a searching consumer, right? So this is essentially it's the increase P of Q. Okay, but post vacancy becomes less attractive, so J is going to fall, right? For consumer, search becomes more attractive, wage higher, but searching for work is less attractive, less chance to find a job, right? And then so Q may rise or fall. Okay, and consequently, unemployment rate may rise or fall. But again, so depending on which one dominates which, right? So there's two opposite effects. But this is quite different from the one-side search model as we discussed earlier. Because now here, so this changing B is going to affect the supply of job as well, right? So that's different from the previous model. Now let's look at a second scenario. If there's an increase in productivity, Z increase. So clearly, so the total surplus is going to increase, right? So now let's use again. So look at here. So total surplus increase immediately. J is going to increase, right? Because essentially it becomes more attractive. There's more surplus to extract, and then so firms more likely to offer vacancies. So now J increase, the immediate means Q increase. Well, in other words, if we look at this original curve, so we're going to go to here. But this is not going to stop here. This is not going to stop here, right? Why? It's because the value for workers is going to increase simply because the wage is going to increase. Remember, so the households are going to extract a fraction of the wage, right? If Z increase and then the surplus, the net surplus the worker can extract is going to increase, or in other words, W is going to increase. If W increase, it becomes more attractive search, and then this P curve is going to increase. Hence, the Q is going to increase further. To summarize, Q is going to increase for sure in this scenario. Okay. So what about U? U is going to fall. V is going to rise. Y is going to rise. If you link this with the business cycle we are going to discuss in the future, or the facts we have seen earlier, you can see. So this Z is a good candidate to explain the fluctuation in aggregate economy. Because basically here, that just tells us if Z increase, you're going to see unemployment rate is going to fall. Actually, this is exactly as we just saw earlier, right? Unemployment fall and Y is going to rise. Okay, vacancy is going to rise. Right. Okay. So the loss experience is looking at margin efficiency. If the margin efficiency is decrease, first of all, there's going to be no change in surplus, but there's going to be change in the chance of finding workers. Right. So again, so let's look at the graph. So this E decrease, that just means That just means the chance is gonna low, and the certainty the entire curve is gonna go down. The entire curve goes down, but this thing doesn't change, meaning that J is going to decrease. Now J is going to decrease, that immediately means this is going to have a lower Q. That means if you look at the original, it's lower Q, by the way, it's over here. But the story is not stop here. Actually, this curve is going to fall down. Why? Because for the households, there's a smaller chance to match with a firm. Hence, this value is going to fall, meaning this is going to fall further. To summarize, the Q is going to fall for sure if there's a decrease in matching efficiency. Oh, by the way, what causes a decrease in matching efficiency? Just think about, so there are more regulation in the labor market, or the technology is kind of slowed down, so it's become harder to find a job. Or maybe there's a structure change, right? Meaning, so there's a new technology, but then so the existing worker, their skill doesn't match with a new sector. Those are examples. Let's back here to summarize, right? No change in total surplus. Chance of finding jobs is going to smaller, and then fewer firms going to post vacancy. J is going to fall. For consumer, searching becomes less attractive. Why? Because the chance to find a job is going to smaller. Then Q is going to fall. Overall, unemployment is going to rise. Vacancy stay the same, but Y is going to fall. Why? Because because there are few match. Right? So this can potentially explain the shifting of beverage curve. Right. So remember, so the shifting beverage curve we have seen. So in some sense, what happens after the Great Recession and why the beverage curve shift out? It could be the matching efficiency. The matching efficiency is rising. Maybe there's like a structure change, right? So this is this chapter. So basically, to summarize, we look at the labor market. We see some status facts regarding to unemployment rate, regarding to vacancy rate. And then we develop two models to understand the dynamics or the determination of unemployment rate.